We've had 4 HBCU Legacy Bowls, and if you ask me, 2025 was the best one yet. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU Podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and if you're new to FanDuel, you can go right now, put down a $5 bet. If that wins, you'll get $150 back in bonus bets. Go to FanDuel.com to make every moment more. Today is all about the HBCU Legacy Bowl. Tomorrow will be all about the HBCU Legacy Bowl. This was a fantastic event. This is a major event. This is a 2-day affair, not a 2-segment, not a double header in 1 and 2 or 2 and 3. This is a double header on Monday and Tuesday. So thank you for joining me on our evening Monday show. We'll be back in the morning with a Tuesday show. We'll wrap up today's specific episode with some smaller takeaways from the HBCU Legacy Bowl. In segment 2, we'll take a look at one half of the show stealers in Daniel Richardson, the Florida A&M quarterback who was the offensive MVP. I didn't need the award to be really impressed with his performance, but it was a nice way to cap it off. But we kicked this whole thing off with the introduction. This was the best HBCU Legacy Bowl that we've had thus far. And it's kind of cliche to say that. It feels like, oh, this is the best one yet. But this isn't even up for debate. Like, I think some people use it as a cliche to just pump up stuff. Oh, this is the last one is the best one. No, this was a fantastic event. And in my opinion, you needed it to be fantastic this year, because before we get to all the greatness, let's get into where I think we stood with the HBCU Legacy Bowl. I don't know what kind of leash the HBCU Legacy Bowl had, but what I can say is that last year was bad product. I don't really think the 2023 HBCU Legacy Bowl was great product either, but I'm a little bit foggy on that. But I did not like the HBCU Legacy Bowl's product that they put on the field on TV after Daniel Richardson got hurt, or Davius Richards. I just said Daniel Richardson. Anyway, y'all know what I'm saying. Davius Richards. So after he got injured, everything went down. It was terrible. The difference between the HBCU Combine and the HBCU Legacy Bowl is that one does get televised. And I don't know what the television conversations and the contract and all that is. I'm not invested in that. That's not my side of it, right? But what I could imagine is that if you're putting bad product on the field, NFL Network is not going to want to continuously air bad product. Mind you, this is already filled. This is a all-star game that is filled with HBCU athletes that a lot of times don't get their shine. So I don't know necessarily that the demand is like, oh, we gotta. So you have to create the demand by having good product. That's my personal opinion. That's what I would assume those conversations are. If you kept putting bad product on the field, I think NFL Network could have been like, why do we keep spending the time here? Like, I'm not necessarily invested in the HBCU experience. Like, it's over. Like, this could be a phase. It could be treated as a phase, I should say. So putting great product on the field, it displays what we've always said is that we have talent. Right? Like, you have to understand, we may know the truth, and I don't want you to think I'm saying that there's no talent here. I know there's talent at HBCUs, but if we have an all-star game of draft-eligible players and it keeps having bad product, ain't nobody going to hear that argument. We're going to move on. We're going to go with what the narrative has been for a long time. So I was glad to see this, and that's why I felt that I felt like it was important because if there was any conversations from NFL Network of is it really worth it? Are people really going to be tuning in? This was good enough product. This was a good game. I think people would watch in 2026. I think you could even grow viewership in 2026. I'm not overly worried about attendance. I think that's going to be pretty good. But anyway, let's get into why this was the best game. And I hit a couple of people who are there. Hey, y'all feel like this was the best one yet? I'm not tripping, right? This is the best Legacy Bowl. I told you, yeah, it extends to the practice, which I like too, right? Let me pull up this tweet from Beasley at HBCU, Draft HBCU. So he had a list of standouts, and this list is lengthy. Draylon Ellis, Jada Byers, Elijah Williams, Isaac Anderson, Robert McDaniel, Treqwan Thomas, Jeremiah Pruitt, Daniel Richardson, Deshaun Mitchell, Joaquin Davis, Miles Crawley. Like, this is an extensive list, and I don't really remember noting this many standouts in the previous seasons. You get to like 5 and you like feel like you're stretching. I don't necessarily know if any of these guys are a stretch. Who are you putting here and saying, he just put him here because he wanted to show love? No. All of these guys had standout moments. All of these guys had standout performances. I think Joaquin Davis could be the one that you argue, but you'll hear me talk a little bit at greater length tomorrow about why Joaquin Davis had one of the better HBCU Legacy Bowls, despite not doing what we've always known Joaquin Davis to do. That's impressive to me. Anyway, like that's just a list to really showcase how impressive that it was. But this was a competitive game. We ain't had a competitive game in forever. We have not had a competitive game. Actually, not even forever. We've never had a competitive game at the HBCU Legacy Bowl until this year. You look at last year, 10-6, 10-3 the year before that, 22-6 that year. Like none of these games have been competitive matchups. They've had some close ones only because the offense was floundering. It didn't always even feel like the defense was forcing the offense to be bad. Just felt like they were playing poorly. We have good games. I walked away from this game saying, dang, that dude really stood out. That dude really stood out. That dude really stood out. Man, we have offensive standout moments. The goal line stand by Team Gaither was a standout moment, and they did it twice. The first time it got taken back because of a pass interference that gave Team Robinson another set of downs, and then they stopped them again. This was impressive. You had defensive moments, and I know some people say, oh, offense, great game. That's not what happened here. Please do not mistake the fact that both teams had offense as the reason that this is a good game. This was a good game because it was competitive, went all the way down to the wire. You had competition for offensive MVP between Draylon Ellis and Daniel Richardson. Whoever won, that quarterback would have won the award, but it wasn't a landslide at all. I thought both guys played phenomenally. You had standout moments by the defense with sacks by Treqwan Thomas. You had standout moments by the offense with some of the just dimes that the quarterbacks were throwing out, some of the runs by some of the running backs. You had great moments on both sides. This was like a game in which you sit down and you said, that's a good team. That's a good team. Each squad is going to have their moments. I don't necessarily know if I felt that way in years past. So for that reason, I'm looking at 2025 as being the best HBCU Legacy Bowl that I've seen. And hearing that it extends out to the practice is only better news for me, because now I get to see guys who maybe they didn't stand out there. Maybe they didn't stand out. Like, for example, Robert McDaniel had a great pass breakup, but I know he had a phenomenal week of practice. Elijah Williams had 1 sack, but I know he had a phenomenal week of practice. And I don't think I'm going to name those 2 guys as my standouts. I may, but I doubt it right now. But in general, you sat down and you watched a quality football game that I think did a great job representing the fact that there is talent at HBCUs. You saw it from the quarterback position, which I would argue is usually the biggest gap. You saw it on the edges. You saw it at cornerback. Like, you saw it at premier positions. Does this equate to guys getting drafted? I think some. I think Elijah Williams really might have upped his stock to being a late round draft pick. I wrote an article on Saints Wire, and I ain't ashamed to plug myself here. I think that Elijah Williams would be a good fit with the Saints. I feel that way about Irv Mulligan. Do I think that Mulligan upped his status to being a A draft pick, I don't know. I don't know. I like Mulligan a lot. I think he's worthy of it. Did he fight through that barrier that is where you went to school? Who knows? I did see that he lined up at slot, so that was cool. He actually talked about that before the game and he did it. So that was dope. But in general, Elijah Williams, Robert McDaniel, that's a guy who climbed charts. I think Robert McDaniel might have fought his way into being a draft pick this year. I really do. He did everything well, but I'm not about to get into all that right now. This was the best HBCU Legacy Bowl that we've seen thus far. It really was. It was entertaining. At no point did you feel like, oh, this thing is dragging on. At no point was that the case. At no point were you sitting there like, is somebody gonna do something? And trust me, there was times when each team wasn't scoring, but it never felt boring. It never felt like I was watching this because I like HBCUs. And that's the thing for me. The HBCU Legacy Bowl is something that I do watch because I like HBCUs. I think there's many other people who watch because they like football. For those who just like football, had no investment for a Treqwan Thomas, this was something that was entertaining. This was something that was entertaining. You didn't need confirmation for anything. You should say, football's on. Let's watch. Fantastic event. Fantastic event. But let's keep pushing forward. Daniel Richardson was, in my opinion, one of the three biggest stars that we saw on Saturday. I'll get into Treqwan Thomas and then also Draylon Ellis on tomorrow's episode. But right now, I want to take a look at the offensive MVP, which was Daniel Richardson, as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Listen, this is daily fantasy sports made easy. With PrizePicks, you just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Is fast, easy, and keeps every game exciting. Listen, this week, I'm looking at Jason Tatum. That's one of my good friend's favorite players. Shout out Agent Zero. That's disrespectful to my guy, but we gonna rock with it. Shout out JT though. For more than 29 points, in Anthony Davis, when he gets back on the court, I think he's gonna be a guy who you can count on for double-digit rebounds. But for right now, maybe look at some of the other bigs in Dallas to try to make up for his absence. There we go. Anyway, download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On College for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even have to win. Just put down $5 and get $50 back instantly. PrizePicks, run your game. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Today. It is the biggest stories around the world, all wrapped up in one nice package for you wherever you listen or watch your podcast. Now, I want to keep rolling, but I want to go to a standout this time. I want to go to Daniel Richardson, who I felt like had a phenomenal game. I thought Daniel Richardson had a phenomenal game on Saturday. He ended the day 9 of 12 for 110 yards and 1 touchdown. Richardson's strong performance started from the very first throw. So they did this thing with quarterbacks where each quarterback got about 2 drives. And then they said, oh, we'll figure out how it's going to go in the fourth quarter. Because you kind of assume that you would get 2 drives, maybe 3 drives in a quarter. So essentially each quarter would go to a quarterback. And then in the fourth, you didn't have 4 quarterbacks. So in the fourth quarter, they would just decide who to roll with. I told you the 2 biggest stars were Draylon Ellis and then also Daniel Richardson. So you can imagine who was on the field for the fourth quarter. But Richardson came in, I think at the end of the first. Yeah, it was at the end of the first. Because for some reason, I remembered. This is funny. So I was wrong. But for some reason, I swore that at the end of a quarter, they had to give the ball back to the other side or something like that. Like, I don't know why that was my memory of how this game went, that you had to give the ball back at the end of the quarter. But Daniel Richardson comes out with about a minute left in the first quarter, and he has the most in-rhythm throw that you saw up to that point. And you could have an argument it was the most in-rhythm throw that you saw the entirety of the game. From the very first snap, he stepped back, boom, 1, 2, 3, hits his guy right up the seams, and it's driving into Gaither territory. I'm I swear to God, I'm in my room. Time out. Why they letting it drip? Because I'm thinking the ball is going to be returned to Team Gaither at the end of this quarter. So stupid. But I was like, man, get the field goal unit on there. You can get a long field goal. And I was sitting here upset. Like I was legitimately, you remember, of course you do. But this year, it was the Chicago Bears who just let mad time drip. I can't remember who they were going against, but they coach got fired the next day. But that's how I was sitting here frustrated. The same way Bears fans were like, call a timeout. It's so funny after they came back from break, and I was like, oh, I guess they didn't have to get the ball back. Stupid me. But but anyway, Daniel Richardson, he ended the game 9 of 12, only 3 incompletions. He had a touchdown and 110 yards. And that first throw really set it up. It set up what you saw from him all day. And honestly, what I saw from Daniel Richardson is what I saw all year long. Competent, poised quarterback play. Whether that was stepping in rhythm on the first throw, boom, 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 boom. Felt like you just had years of experience with this guy because you hadn't seen that up to this point. And I've always said you see disjointed performances between quarterbacks and wide receivers. I'll give you another thing that I heard. I don't remember where it was. I think it was Louis Riddick, but I could be wrong. But somebody said basically at the scouting combine, you want to see these guys throw because the great quarterbacks develop chemistry with their wide receivers quickly. What I saw from Daniel Richardson was quick chemistry with his wide receivers. That's what I saw from Daniel Richardson. But it didn't stop at that first throw. I would argue that one of my favorite play by him actually was an extension of what I seen with FAMU. I love to give myself a pat on the back. I ain't ashamed to do it. But one thing that I said about Daniel Richardson is I thought he was going to be the quarterback who led Team Robinson to the most success because he knows how to work under duress. And there was a play, it was 2nd and long, and he threw the ball to Jeremiah Pruitt, his teammate. But he threw the ball to Jeremiah Pruitt. But in there, he took a step back. The pressure kind of got on him. It wasn't a lot of pressure. And he just shuffled to the right a tad bit, stepped into the throw, and then Pruitt made a good move to get the first down. But that was the type of play that I knew Daniel Richardson was capable of having. I knew it, and I knew he would have to do it. It was just a matter if I was right or not. And I happened to be right once again. Pat yourself on the back. But Richardson, for me, I wanted to see how he performed because all that testing didn't mean anything for Richardson. He a ball player. Daniel Richardson is a ball player. Make sure I didn't miss anything. But yeah, I do think that having a teammate there, whether it was Gassett, who he had another impressive throw to, or if it was Pruitt, I do kind of feel like that plays a part in allowing you to feel comfortable. The fact that you have guys that you have been around. That I don't think that first throw was to Pruitt or Gassett. I can't remember who it was to, but I don't think it was to either one of them. There was another throw to Gassett where it was up. They were up 3. It was 3rd and medium, and he had to throw a nice touch pass to Gassett. Excuse me. I keep getting their teammates confused, but he had to throw a nice touch pass to Gassett. And this was one that was praised by the commentators because he was talking about how a lot of quarterbacks are going to throw that one hard. They're not going to really lay it up for you. And it was a crossing route. So, of course, you want to get it to him quick, let the ball get in his hand, let him get some yardage for the first down. But you also want to have a ball that is allowing him to run after the catch, not one that hits you here. And I got to kind of settle myself for a second. He floated it out. It wasn't like a duck. It was just a nice little touch pass right in front of Gas. It allowed him to keep pushing. There were multiple times when you had good throws. You look at the touchdown, it was perfect. It was about 10 yards. Everybody was expecting something with the running back, whether that was a check down, whether that was a run. You could kind of see the linebackers creeping up because of it. And when the linebackers creeped up, it allowed some room in the end zone for the wide receiver to be right over the top. Boom. Hit him. Bow. It was, I'll act like I was in there. I feel like I'm on a VR game or something, all these movements I'm doing. But the point is, Daniel Richardson performed at a very high level, and he had 3 really great throws throughout the day. He was the 3rd FAMU player to get an MVP in the Legacy Bowl. Mind you, we've only had 4 of these events ever. So you had Antoine Collier in the first ever game was the defensive MVP. The next year, Xavier Smith was the offensive MVP. And now you took a year away, but Daniel Richardson is the 2025 offensive MVP in the Legacy Bowl. He had great throws from the very first snap, where he had the best in-rhythm throw I had seen to that point and arguably the best one of the game. That was a great throw where it showed actual, not just improvisation. I don't think I said that right, but he didn't have to improv. Daniel Richardson had to improv on that play. He said, boom, I seen it. I saw it. Boom, we're going to hit it. This is exactly what I read pre-snap. I thought it was a great game by him, and it's what I kind of expected. He had a nice rollout throw where he threw a nice crosser. He had some really good throws. Daniel Richardson had good throws in different situations, on pace, shuffle in the pocket to avoid some pressure that wasn't really there, but just nice movement. Had the ability to throw on the run. You had the ability to throw over the top, had nice touch. There's a lot of really good throws from Daniel Richardson in this game, so it should be no surprise that he was the offensive MVP. I thought he was the best quarterback. It was very close between him and Draylon Ellis, but Team Robinson getting the victory gave Richardson the edge in the offensive MVP race. Now I want to push forward and talk about a couple of other takeaways as we continue and wrap up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. FanDuel, for me, is beautiful because you don't have to do everything before the game. A guy like me who's extremely forgetful, I'm going to put some money down on the Cavaliers versus Hornets or whatever. Ah, dang, the game has started. I guess I've missed out. Not with FanDuel. Not with FanDuel. You can, first off, put down some same game parlays and then also do live game bets. So maybe you see something in the middle of the game that you think is going your way. We can go ahead and attach that. So you go ahead and go to fanduel.com. It's easy for you. It's easy payouts. It's going to be quick payouts. You go ahead and go to fanduel.com for the upcoming NBA games. The NFL draft is going to have things you can put money down on, everything in between. It's just on you. And if you're new to FanDuel, you get $150 back in bonus bets. Go to fanduel.com. That is fanduel.com. If you put down a winning $5 bet, you get $150 back in bonus bets. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. This was the best HBCU Legacy Bowl that I have watched thus far, and I have a lot of takeaways. Honestly, I could bring some of them up later, but I think I'm going to try to squeeze the majority of them in here right now. First off, we got offense again. We got offense again. And it's funny because through 3 quarters, it was only really Team Robinson. Team Gaither's only offensive touchdown through the first 3 quarters was set up by a near pick 6 at the end of the first half that put you in the red zone, put you inside the 10. So Draylon Ellis had a really good throw to Jaleel Dean. He actually had both of his touchdowns to Jaleel Dean, by the way. But then in the second half, we saw some offense get together, specifically in that fourth quarter. We saw some offense really begin to come together. And I don't know if I'm going to get into talking about Miles Crowley tomorrow, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it today. What I saw from Miles Crowley was very impressive. What I heard about Miles Crowley was even more impressive. Somebody said that this was the best week of consistent performance that they have ever seen from Miles Crowley. To have that be said about you in an all-star game speaks volumes. It may speak some volumes about coaching, to be honest. I hate to say that, but for him to show the best of himself every single day for a week is literally what you attempt to do in any all-star game. And that means Miles Crowley achieved it. Then he came out here for people like me who weren't in those practices. And in the game, he had a nice rollout to his left, flipped his shoulders, and chunked a deep shot to Deshaun Mitchell. That was beautiful. It was one of the better throws you had seen all day. It was one of the smoothest throws you saw all day. And it wasn't easy either. Everybody will tell you rolling out to your left when you're right-handed is more difficult than rolling out to the direction of your strong hand. So I thought that was very impressive. Look, 17-14, you had 34 total or 31 total points. It's the most output that you've gotten from an HBCU Legacy Bowl. The next highest was 28 in the very first year, but that was 22-6. This was an even output of scoring. Also, if history repeats itself, Team Gaither will come out with the victory next year. So it went Gaither, Robinson, Gaither, and now Robinson. So we'll see if the pattern continues. Hopefully not. I'm a SWAT guy, so I'm rooting for Team Robinson every year. But yeah, we got offense. We got offense. One thing you'll notice is that the number 2 quarterbacks, they shine the most. Daniel Richardson, Draylon Ellis. Richardson ended up being the MVP. I think if Ellis would have led his team down for a touchdown drive, they would have gotten the MVP nod. But overall, that was the common denominator to me. And it was interesting that you see multiple plays where Richardson goes to Gassett and he goes to Pruitt. Both of Ellis's touchdowns went to his teammate, Jalal Dean. So I don't think that in these games you should always try to, I'm gonna target this guy and that guy. But if I have a relationship with this player, I'm going to target this player because it's going to make me look the best. And I know how he wants the ball thrown to him. I know how this guy likes to throw the ball if I'm a wide receiver. But from a quarterback standpoint, I know how to set up everything that I need to when I'm throwing to somebody I was throwing to all year long, right? Speaking of teammates, this was another one that I had, and I think I'll save any other takeaways that are just broad. Yeah, I'll save any other takeaways. But Alabama State really shined in this game, and I don't think that's going to get talked about a lot. But Alabama State put up a strong performance. I was looking at James Burgess coming into the game, and I thought that he had a couple of targets early. He was aggressive like I thought, but then he just disappeared, and I didn't see anybody target him. So as a cornerback, either he wasn't out there or that was just a good thing. But I didn't see 27 much during the game. But at the beginning, you did see a couple of outbreaking routes. You saw one that the receiver got hands on and he ended up pushing him out of bounds. And you had another one where if that was an accurate ball, it was going to be a pass deflection at best, maybe even an interception by Burgess. But I thought he had a strong performance. As a cornerback, you don't want to really be seen too much. And this is let me actually do a little offshoot real quick and we'll get back to the Hornets. But that team Robinson starting secondary stacked. All right, you had Burgess, McDaniel, and you had Bowler. It's no shock to me that Eric Phoenix wasn't able to get anything going through the air. It really is no shock to me because when you have Bowler and you have Burgess on one side, right, and then you have, or on opposite sides, I should say, and then in the middle you have Robert McDaniel, that's going to be really tough to throw on. So I ain't even knocking Eric Phoenix for that. That's a lockdown all-star secondary, right? But back to the Hornets. Armon Scarborough, game-winning interception. He sealed that game with his interception. And I really did think that Draylon Ellis was about to lead them down for a touchdown. It was going to be 4-down territory because there's no OT, so you're going to go for it every chance you could. And it was a good pass deflection by, I can't remember who, I think last name Grant, but I can't remember who it was specifically. But Armon Scarborough came up with the interception that sealed the game. Burgess had a couple of pass deflection or plays on the ball that set up the game in the very beginning. And you had Treqwan Thomas who dominated all through the game. So Alabama State was really represented with strong defensive play. I mean, it's Alabama State, so are we really surprised about that? But you had somebody who opened and set the tone. You had somebody who sealed the game, and you had Treqwan Thomas, who was probably the most visible player on any defensive team. He was probably the biggest impact player on either side of the ball in the HBCU Legacy Bowl. And I think we'll open up tomorrow's episode breaking down Treqwan Thomas's 4-sack performance. So like I said, it's a 2-part show today. Tomorrow it's a doubleheader because the Legacy Bowl indeed was a movie. So I'll see you guys tomorrow bright and early, 7 a.m. Come check it out. Come show some love. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.